Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's Robinhood half and full marathon webinar with me, George Anderson. And apologies for being a couple of minutes late there. I've actually just moved house, and the house I moved to at the moment, we don't have broadband installed, and it's a nightmare. And there's no, I've got my phone, great, I can get 3G signal, no 3G signal either. So I've gone around to a friend's house who lives around the corner, and then I couldn't get in either. So I'm a little bit rushed and a little bit behind, but I'm now here and I'm now ready to go. And this is a really important time, actually, if you're training for the half or the full marathon in Nottingham next weekend, because it's the time where you've done all the hard work, you've done all the training for, or I at least hope you've done a good share of it for the last few weeks or even months. And now you've got to tie it all together by putting the finishing touches in place in the taper. So what I'd like you to do in this session this evening is I'd like to invite you to ask me questions, any questions that you may have about your training, about well, nutrition, if you will as well. I'm going to be covering a little bit of that in just a moment. And anything about the day, if it's logistics or administrative, then I'm probably not your man. I'm not going to be able to answer those sort of questions, but I will be able to answer questions about, or give you my opinion, should I say, on training related questions. So if you have something that's niggling away at you, or what pace you should be going out at, that sort of thing, then please do ask, and ask by leaving a question in the comments box. And I'm just going to flick over to Facebook now so I can see that you see that it's coming up all right. I'll just check out pages all right. Yeah, so it's all live, it's all going through, which means that we're ready to go. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this special period of time called the taper. And judging by some of the comments and posts over on the Facebook group, and if you're not there, if you're not in the group, then you definitely want to get yourself over to there, because it's going to be hotting up in the next few days and the next week and a half. 10 days to go, can you believe it, till the race. And there are lots of questions about what we should be doing at this phase of training. And many people who have either had to miss chunks of training or miss sessions, or have had picked up colds at the wrong time, and not that there's ever a right time to get a cold, and are wondering what they should do with the taper. Should they squeeze in some of those last runs? Should they jiggle things around, reduce the length of the taper, or just crack on and do it as is? So I'm going to cover all that in the next sort of 15 minutes or so. And during this time, like I said, ask your questions by popping them in the comments box below this webinar, and I will endeavor to answer them afterwards, and we'll just go for as long as it takes to answer those questions. So a few specific things I want to cover this evening. First of all, I'm going to recap on what you would have received in the email from the Robinhood, from the sweatshop on Sunday. I believe that went out, where I talked about some of the training things you should be doing in this special fortnight. But I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about how to pace yourself on the day, how to kind of work out what your pacing strategy should be on the day, and also what your nutrition should be the night before in particular, because that's always a big question. What should you eat the night before? What should you eat for breakfast of the race? I don't want to go into too much detail on kind of race day nutrition strategies like during the run, because what I say there isn't if it's not relevant to you, if you haven't trained with that technique, then you don't want to be trying anything new on the race. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that tonight. And I'm also going to talk about a little bit about a visualization strategy that you can use. It's very powerful, and you can use this between now and the race. You can choose to do it or to ignore it. It's up to you. But it's something that I've used many times myself, and many other people who I know, successful athletes and famous athletes, famous swimmers and athletes in all sorts of sports, use a very similar visualization method to help instill a sense of confidence about the way things are going to go on the day. So I'll talk you through that as well. It's very straightforward. It's the good news. So first of all, let's have a quick recap on what kind of training we should be doing right now, because it is important that you don't go out and try and smash in some long runs, catch up on any missed miles that you might have missed over the last few weeks, because you need to be the objective of your training program is to get you to a point where you're trained but recovered enough. So on the day itself, when you get onto that start line in Nottingham next Sunday, you're in the best possible shape. And yes, sure, stopping training completely for 2 weeks or dropping off your training, you're going to get a little bit of a detraining effect going on there. but not as much as the gains you're going to get from being fresh and being ready and having all that fatigue flushed out of your legs. And the training I recommend you do is, there's all sorts of ways of tapering. If you don't have a training program with a specific tapering strategy in it, then the simplest way to do it is just to drop your runs down to say 45 minutes, an hour maximum, maybe an hour this weekend, especially if you're training for the marathon there, rather than the half marathon, and add in some short bursts of speed. So strides, we call them, where you're not actually sprinting, but you're certainly going faster than you would ordinarily go. And you lengthen out your stride, so hence the name strides. And you do that for maybe 30 to 60 seconds, then rest for a half a minute or a minute, and then you go again. And maybe do 8 to 10 of them. So it's not going to leave you feeling completely battered by the end of it, but at the same time, you're going to feel like you're doing something. And that's going to help you with what I call taper rage. And I've had this so many times. It's a horrible sensation. It's where you feel like you should be out there running, you should be out there training. You've been used to doing all this high volume, high intensity training, and now you're not doing anything, or so it seems. And so you can get a little bit angry. You can get a little bit upset and fly off the handle at things, the smallest thing. And the closer you get to the race, the more likely it is that that's going to happen. So just calm yourself and focus on all the other things that you can do that aren't training specific, training related. So you can spend the same amount of time. You could do some stretching and some foam rolling. You could do some of the visualization that we're going to go through later on. You could go to you could have some extra massage sessions booked in if you're used to having massage. If you're not, they're actually still okay to start having massage now. I wouldn't have your very first massage session 48 hours before the race, but now is okay. You've got 10 days to go to see if it's going to work for you. Spend that time doing productive things, thinking about the race, thinking about the day itself, packing your kit well in advance so you know what you're doing. Think about the day, how you're going to get to the start line, what your journey is going to be like. Spend the time doing that so you're focusing on the race rather than wishing you could be out there running, because that day's going to come around soon enough. So that's the best way to cope with taper rage. It's likely to happen, and it's probably harder for people who live with you rather than it is for you. Certainly ask my wife, and that's what she'll tell you anyway. So that's the first thing. I also want to talk about nutrition the night before, because there's a big thing for runners to really go to town with what we call carb loading. And it sort of makes sense. You're running the next day. You're going to be doing anywhere between an hour and a half or maybe quicker for the half marathon, and up to maybe 5 or even 6 hours for the marathon. So you could be doing a long period of time on your feet. It makes sense that you need to have the energy in your body, the fuel in the tank, to enable you to do that. Now, if you're not used to eating loads and loads of massive plates of pasta and potatoes and rice, if you're not used to doing that, and then you have all that the night before, well, that could quite easily upset your stomach and make you wake up in the morning with cramps and a big drop off in your energy levels. So my advice, instead of massively ramping up and doing something different the night before, my advice is to just maybe gently increase, or just a small increase in the amount of carbohydrates you eat. If you're going to carb load, you don't actually have to have a huge amount more. If you think about the taper, the idea of carb loading is that you start the race with full tanks of fuel. So your muscle glycogen stores store the carbohydrates you get broken down to sugars, broken down to glycogen that's stored there in the muscles. Now, if they're depleted, as they are after a training session, then you've only got, say, a half a tank of fuel. Makes sense. But you've just been tapering for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, which means that you've got you will have built up those reserves. You will already have a full tank of fuel. So you don't really have to, there's no additional benefit to having enormous volumes of pasta and bread and potatoes and rice the night before a race. The only thing it's going to do is to upset your stomach, or make you put on weight, or make you feel bloated, or whatever. None of which you really want at this stage. So just do what you would normally do. Think back to the best long runs that you've done. If you've been keeping a training log, then it's easy to do. Just go back to your long runs and look at what you ate the night before them. Really, the race shouldn't be that much different. And the same thing for the morning of the race. You don't really want to be doing anything different. There's no special formula. People think runners have to have a bowl of porridge in the morning. If you're not used to having porridge in the morning, then you're going to have porridge, then who knows how you're going to react to that. And at the very best, you're not going to enjoy eating it. So just have what you would normally have, maybe increasing the amount of carbohydrates just a little bit. But I would much rather the runners who I coach have higher nutrient levels, because they're what's going to allow your body to recover whilst you're out there running, whilst you're going to fuel you, give you the everything you need whilst you're running. Okay, so think high nutrient foods rather than just go to town on the empty starchy carbohydrates just because you think that's what runners have to do. Okay, just to finish off before I go into this last bit here, I'm going to talk about visualization next. Just a reminder, I haven't checked Facebook yet, so have a look down below. Ask any questions that you may have, because if you have got questions, this is a great time to ask them. You can always go over to the Facebook group as well, and I'm sure we can get the link up on this post so you know where to go for that. But just request to join, we'll let you in. You can come over there and ask questions. But you know what? I can give you an answer right now. If you have a question that's burning a hole in your brain, then ask away, and I will do my best to answer it live on air. But first, I want to talk about this visualization strategy. And this is really powerful, really powerful. Not all of you will do it, and those who have a go might not kind of really buy into it. But I want you to think about doing this. And think about taking it seriously and having a go at it. If you keep an open mind, so you at least get to experience the benefits. So, if you imagine yourself, you probably already thought about what it's going to be like on a day. You probably thought about maybe in passing what it's going to be like to be there on the start line, how you're going to feel. You might have thought about what it's going to be like when you get to the finish line. You've run the race, you've done it in your target time, or you might have visualized what it's going to be like when you look down at your watch as you cross that finish line, and there it is with 3:59:59 or whatever it is you're after. So all this visualization strategy does is it allows you, it builds on that. So it by spending 5-10 minutes as often as you want, once a day, twice a day if you really want to, sitting down in a quiet room where you're not going to be disturbed and thinking about every aspect of the run, every aspect that you're in control of during the run, that's going to help you when you get to the day itself. So to do that, you might start thinking about, okay, just it helps to close your eyes when you're doing this and think about yourself there standing on the start line. Just done the warm-up. Make sure you do the warm-up. I'll be taking that. And you think, oh, what are you going to be thinking? What are you going to be feeling? What are you going to be looking like? What kit are you going to be wearing? What do you think it's going to be like looking around, seeing all those other runners? What sounds are you going to hear? So think about all these things, what you can see, what you can hear, how you're feeling, and be there on the start line. Transport yourself down, transport down into yourself on the start line so you're right there. And then imagine what it's going to be like when that gun goes and you shuffle forwards and eventually cross the start line and then you're off. Feel that confidence and strength that you have in your body. Feel that confidence of all the running that you've done. Forget about all the runs that you might have missed or the miles you haven't done. You can't do anything about that right now. Think about all the things that you have done and how that's going to power you through the training that you put in, how confident you are with your ability to get through this distance. Even if this is the first time, the furthest you've ever run is going to be on race day. That's okay. It's absolutely fine. Probably 50% of the field will be in the same boat as you. But feel how you're going to imagine what it's going to be like as you get closer and closer to the end, as you go through the run. Imagine what it's going to be like when you get to those points and you suddenly feel tired. Your legs are feeling heavy. Your breathing is getting higher and higher. Your heart rate's getting higher. Your shoulders are getting heavy. What are you going to say to yourself at those points? Are you going to give up? Or are you going to keep going? What are you going to say to yourself? How are you going to feel when you get to those points? And as you approach the finish line, what are you going to feel like as you get towards the finish line? You're looking down at your watch. You can see you're getting closer and closer to your personal best or your goal time. What is it going to feel like? What is it going to look like? What is your watch going to look like at that time? Take a look down at your wrist and imagine your watch there telling you what the time is. What is it going to look like around you? How are you going to be feeling at that moment? And as you cross the finish line, what feelings are you going to experience? What are you going to look like? How are your friends and family going to react when you tell them what you've done? Think about all of this. Think about as much detail in this with as much detail as you possibly can, and do it multiple times. Because the science shows us that the more you can run that race in your mind before you actually get to the start line, your brain doesn't recognize the difference between reality and imagination. So if you can imagine your way through a successful race, coming up against the challenges that you're going to come up against in the race, but then overcoming those challenges by the things that you say to yourself, the mantras that you have, and the words that you know you're capable of saying to yourself, overcome those challenges, those obstacles, and get to the end in your target time or in the best form possible. That's what you want. And you want to think about that multiple times between now and the race. Okay, so find a quiet space at some point and sit down and really pay some attention to visualize what it's going to be like to go through, start to finish, a successful race, whether it's a half or the full marathon. Okay, I've used that visualization strategy, almost the exact same thing, many, many times. And pretty much every goal that I do, I will have already run that race, already presented that seminar, or done that piece of work. I will have already done it in advance multiple times in my brain. I even do it when I'm in the gym, lift by lift, rep by rep, set by set. I will visualize it before I go in to try and do it. You can do it for training sessions, but it works especially well when you think you're going to be feeling out of control, you're not quite sure how it's going to go. Visualize yourself being successful at whatever it is, first of all, and then when you get to the start line, that's going to give you that extra confidence because you will already have done it. Okay, see who has a go at doing that one. I'm just going to flick over now to Facebook and see who, if anybody has asked any questions. It may be that you don't have any questions. Maybe you're all sorted with what you need to do for the day. I'm just refreshing my screen. Okay, here we go. All right, we've got a question from Paul. As you know, I've had a calf injury. Yes, Paul, I know, yeah, you've had a bit of a dodgy calf there. Did a 6.5 mile run last Friday and 12-mile walk on Sunday. Not feeling too bad. Shall I risk doing the full, or I'm thinking now dropping to the half? Scared that if you try the full, it won't make it. The last run was 19 miles 4 weeks ago. Done very few runs and only a few rides on my bike. What do you think? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what I would do if it was me. I would probably go for the full, but I would have two caveats. The first thing would be I would make sure that I changed my my target time, change my expectations. Because if you've missed a chunk of training, then it stands to reason you're not going to be able to do what you set out to do at the beginning. 4 weeks ago, I'm not quite sure, I can't remember when your calf went there, but 4 weeks ago, that was your last proper run, 19 miles, decent run there, so you'll have gone as far as you need to go. But is that far enough for you to be confident? So if it was me, I'd probably go for it, but I would slow right down and change my goal and have lower expectations of my performance in the race. Alternatively, well, actually, no, that's what I'd do, because if I went for the half marathon, if you went for the half marathon and you went faster, probably going faster is just as much likelihood of the calf going properly and you're not finishing the race as it would be for a slower marathon. So that's what I'd do, Paul. It's not a great situation to be in. Your third option is to not do it at all. I don't think that is an option for you. I think you've committed yourself. You're going to do this one way or the other. You just want to make sure that you enjoy the experience. So that's the most important thing. Okay, any other questions? Does anybody have anything else to ask me apart from Paul? And I see that the post there for the group has been put up. And it's a great group, by the way. If you haven't already joined it, just hop over there now and ask to join, because it's just a really welcoming group. It's not just me posting on there. In fact, I post there very little now because there are so many people in there who are answering questions and posting their comments and their support for each other. If you're feeling a little bit nervous, that's the place to go. It's a really good group to be in if you're training for the Robin Hood full or half marathons. I'm just going to refresh this one more time, and then I am going to wrap things up. It doesn't know if we've got any more questions tonight. Now, I will say one more thing. If you're on my email list, then this week, probably tomorrow or at some point over the weekend on Monday, if I don't get a chance to get it out tomorrow, I am going to be putting out another, it's not really a visualization strategy, it's more of a kind of an effective anchoring strategy that's to do with a warm-up. So which means that when you hear a particular track on the warm-up routine, I'll tell you what it is, it's Uptown Funk. When you hear that track, it will make you feel relaxed and confident. So if you think that being relaxed and confident is a useful thing to be, a useful ways to feel at the start of a race, relaxed and confident, then you definitely want to make sure you're on my email list. So to do that, go to runningbygeorge.com/Robin Hood, get on my email list, and I will be sending you details of how to do that, how to make sure that you've anchored in that track. So when you hear it, it's like Zoolander. You'll hear the track and you'll immediately go into a trance and you'll feel relaxed and confident. You won't want to kill a prime minister of wherever. You'll just feel, if you haven't seen the film, you won't get those references, but hopefully you have. It's a great film. But you'll feel relaxed and you'll feel confident. And that's a great, in my opinion, that's a good way to feel at the start line of a race that you've been training hard for many weeks or possibly months. So last refresh to see if there are any questions coming in here tonight. I'm not sure that we have. No, just Paul's question. Thanks for asking your question, Paul, and thanks for the organisers for putting up the link to the group. I am going to say goodbye and good night. And if you do have any other questions that you weren't on here, you watched the recording of this, or you didn't get a chance to ask, then hop over to the Facebook group, ask them over there, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Just tag me in the post, and I'll make sure that I get round to answering them as soon as I can. Thanks very much, folks. Enjoy the rest of the training. Don't get taper rage. And I'll see you on the start line when I'm taking the warm up in the Robin Hood half and full marathon in just 10 days time. Bye for now.